Hey Giants fans, welcome back to Giants Latest. Today we are still, unfortunately, recapping the Giants' historic collapse against the Broncos. So let's go ahead and continue because it was such a fun game. Obviously, there's a lot of frustrations and a lot of bad things that came out of this game. Giving up 33 points in one quarter is unacceptable. Your head coach in his fourth year not knowing how to manage the clock, unacceptable. The same head coach being a part of the game plan and approving what Shane Bowen does week in and week out. The kicker situation, the list goes on, okay? We know. But believe it or not, there's actually some good things that came out of this game, and I want to talk about those because unfortunately, because we didn't win, we're not focusing on some of the good stuff. And it just sucks because if we win this game, it's a different conversation that we're having this week, right? But I do think there are some players who deserve some love. And, at the very least, are going to be building blocks to the future of this franchise. So let's go ahead and get into it. I want to talk about Jackson Dart, who I think we talked about this a little bit yesterday, had over 260 passing yards, which is the most that any quarterback has had against this Broncos defense this entire year. They also put up over 30 points, which is also the most that has been put up against this Broncos defense all year. So, I know that interception came at a costly time, but ultimately Jackson Dart played a great game. He doesn't have Malik Neighbors. The run game, they rushed for over 100 yards, which was again more than what previous teams have been doing against the Broncos. But there was a lot that went right in this game for the offense. And for a fan base like ours who has been struggling for good offensive line play, good quarterback play, a decent run game, an offense that actually scores touchdowns. We're finally getting that with Jackson Dart, with this offensive line. Andrew Thomas being back has been night and day difference for this team, and they deserve to be discussed. So let's talk about the offensive line a little bit. Andrew Thomas gave up one quarterback hit. That's it. One. The entire offensive line only gave up one sack. Let's marinate on this for a second. They gave up one sack to a defense who, through 6 weeks of the season, recorded 30 sacks. And this is one of the things that I talked about going into the game, is they got 9 sacks against the Jets. The Jets suck. They're the worst team in the NFL. The second worst team in the NFL is the Titans, who they also had a lot of sacks against. So, anyway, they didn't have that many sacks against the Giants. I believe Dart ended up with 5, and some of them, of course, were on the quarterback, not on the offensive line. So a great day for an offensive line where they're missing their offensive line coach who didn't travel with the team. They're missing JMS, who actually has been playing way better football than he's ever played. They have Austin Schlottman in there as a backup center, and they played very well. So Thomas gives up one quarterback hit. John Runyon, not a single pressure, not one. Austin Schlottman only gave up one pressure, GVR one sack and one pressure, and Illuminor one pressure, and then Illuminor had that false start. But overall, they gave up 5 pressures on 44 pass block attempts. This offensive line is really coming along. They're playing some of the best football that we have seen in a really long time from this offensive line. And I don't want that to get lost throughout what's going on this season, because I know everyone's talking about Dart and Scat, but the offensive line needs to be included in that conversation. The reason why this offense is able to run the way it's running right now is because the offensive line is doing their job. And they're keeping Jackson Dart upright. The amount of time that Dart had on so many of his dropbacks, especially during the Broncos game, to sit there and get through his reads and wait for someone to be open is incredible. So this offensive line deserves some love. I think we should all just soak it in, enjoy it. And at the very least, it's something to look forward to moving forward with this team. I really, really want the Giants to re-sign Jermaine Illuminor yesterday. I think that needs to be one of the moves that they make immediately. And with that being said, I also really want them to re-sign Cordell Flott. He's done a hell of a job. He's light years better than Tay Banks. He is playing some of his best football this year. He has had some incredible plays, and they've all come in big time opportunities. They've come on 3rd down, on 4th down, in the red zone. He has made the best plays. And I think that's also something that needs to be talked about, and he absolutely deserves it. He's having a great year. I am happy that he outbeat Tay Banks for that CB2 role. And I think that He's really making progress. And with a team that is obviously struggling at the cornerback position, you need to put money into players that deserve it. So, I know we're missing Micah McFadden. I would like to see the Giants re-sign him, but I think you got to re-sign Cordell Flott based on the way that he's playing this year. He's done a hell of a job. And when we talk about players on defense who are playing well, we're talking about Brian Burns. He now is leading the NFL in tackles for loss with 12. Myles Garrett is behind him with 10. And Burns is leading the NFL in sacks with 9. I mean, he is playing at the defensive player of the year rate. He's having an unbelievable season. It breaks my heart that he was so upset after the game. He was distraught at his locker. He was screaming, walking out of the field into the locker room. I know he's new to this team, and we always talk about that we want to see the team win for guys like Dexter Lawrence and Andrew Thomas who have been here for so long, and they deserve to have a winning football team. But someone like Brian Burns, who came from the Panthers and comes over to the Giants with this hope of, they're finally fixing the offensive line. They're bringing in some talent. We've got the new quarterback. The offense is doing everything they possibly can to try and win these games. And the defense, the play calling is just holding them back. Burns is playing incredibly. He deserves a lot of praise. I know I saw some people getting on him for the one flag yesterday. He's had like 2 penalties in 7 games. The least of my concerns is Brian Burns' 2 penalties that he's had. He's been playing at an incredible level, and I just wish that the Giants were winning more games, because it's so obvious that the defensive coordinator is one of the biggest reasons as to why they're losing games that they should have won. And it just would make such a big difference for someone like Burns. And we talk about this a lot too, especially last year, the way that Dexter Lawrence played. And he just didn't get any credit or any notoriety for the way that he played, because the Giants won 3 games. And it just sucks. It just feels again like we're wasting talent. And when you look at Burns and you look at Flott's in his 4th year. Brian Burns is luckily only in the 2nd year of his trade contract now with the Giants. But you don't have these guys forever, The hope is that Brian Burns is going to continue to play that way, especially if they retain Tibbs and they have Carter and they keep Burns and everyone's healthy and whatever. But it's just really disappointing. He's playing so well, and you just want this team to win, And they were so close and they blew it, but it's not because of Burns. He played an incredible game. So with that being said, I know many of us are like waiting on that update about Shane Bowen, and it's not coming. Brian Daboll spoke to the media on Monday, and he was, of course, asked if he's planning on making any changes in regards to play calling duties, coordinators, new coaches, etc. And he said, no, not at this time. And, I saw an interesting tweet from someone saying that Daboll's keeping Bowen because he needs a scapegoat and something to kind of back him up if by the end of the season he's fighting for his job. And it kind of made me think for a second, because I was like, wow, maybe they're not wrong about that. I don't necessarily think that's a big part of it. I think it could be a part of it. But I think the biggest part of it is just that they just don't want to make a change. I don't know. I also saw another video of Giants players on the sideline and Shane Bowen, they're not really interacting with him. After the Eagles game, after the Flott interception, Bowen came up and hugged him, and then Flott is high-fiving some of the other guys, and then there's another shot of Bowen just standing in the background, and the players are all talking to each other and not listening to him. I don't know. It doesn't seem like good vibes. I don't know if they feel like it's too early to make a change. I don't know if John Mara got involved. I don't know. I do think that they should make a change. I think if you're Brian Daboll and you're looking at what has gone on the last few weeks with this team, obviously you're a big part of the reason why they're losing Brian Daboll. But I think it would be easy for him to say, well, and maybe this is why, right? If I'm Brian Daboll and I go ahead and fire Shane Bowen, then you better win the next few games and your defense better light it up, because you made that change, right? So maybe he thinks that there's no one else who's capable in this Giants organization right now of being promoted to defensive coordinator who thinks they're going to be a better play caller than him. I really don't know. But I think when you've lost a couple games at this point, the way that you have because you've been playing this soft defense. We saw Dable upset about it on the sidelines. We saw them screaming to each other about it. We see the players upset about it. We hear that they are having private meetings with each other, and then with Shane Bowen telling them, I want you to let us be aggressive. That's all concerning. It's very concerning. And I don't know how, as the coach, you bounce back from that. So I don't know what's going to happen. As of right now, they're not making any changes. It's too late now. And we'll see what they end up doing. Maybe they'll make a change after the Eagles game, depending on how that goes. I don't know. But what I do know is that this coaching staff and front office is not proactive, and it's one of the biggest issues that I have with them. So stay tuned to see if anything else changes. We're going to be talking about the Eagles in a few.